my Northeast Salvage Auction trip. This morning we're at Copart in Newburgh, New York, and it did not take long at all to find a ton of cool stuff. We're not gonna waste any time. We're starting off with a car that I didn't know was here until about an hour ago. It just so happens that I know this car, and I bet a lot of you guys watching do too. Unless you've been living under a rock lately, you've probably seen a video going around the internet. It's of a Gen 2 red Viper RT10 racing an Integra, and it doesn't end so well. And by that, I mean he smashes it into a telephone pole. The first thing that I noticed when I ran the VIN on this car, realized exactly which car it was that it looks much better now than it did in the wreck. It turns out that this car was originally wrecked in Ohio. It's sold at Salvage Auction in Ohio. Somebody bought it in New Jersey, lightly fixed it somewhat, hung some body panels back on it, made it look a little less scary, and now it's back here. Whether they decided to just not fix it, gave up on the project, it was more than they wanted to try to deal with, who knows. When that video first got posted, everybody jumped to the fact that it was probably old tires. Fortunately for us, I can settle that right now. These are R888s from the 12th week of 2015. So call it 7-year-old tires. If any of you guys have ran R888s, you know after about a year, they are smoked. They don't hook, they don't stick, they're pretty much rock hard and good for nothing. So for once, it seems like the internet may have actually been right on why something happened in the car world. Now, we spent enough time talking about the tires, let's go ahead and get under the hood. Obviously, the car has some very small diameter aftermarket headers. It doesn't look like it got hit too bad, though. That's not what I recall from the actual wreck itself. In the wreck video, there was oil everywhere. That thing was toasted. It actually lined up that we are here on auction day, and this Viper is about to run right now. As you just saw, $23,300 to somebody in Pennsylvania. When the car sold in Ohio, it sold for $17,500, of course, before the fees. So it looks like whoever brought it up here actually made a couple bucks on it. You notice it was on approval, so there's no guarantee that's going to be accepted. Maybe they want more money, we'll see. Now moving on, we don't have to walk very far, which is good because it's smoking hot out here. Unless you're completely new to the channel, you guys know how I feel about 911 turbos. I'm a fan of pretty much any 911 turbo, even the ones I can't afford. When it comes down to the ones I can't afford, this one is definitely going to be up there. It looks like it needs a quarter, some rear structure, a bumper. It may need a couple trunk panels as well. This one's a 2019 Turbo S PDK transmission, listed as running on the site with only 16,000 miles. Unfortunately, it looks like somebody cut the key strap here. They hang that around the steering wheel, it holds the key. Now we don't have a key, now we can't start it. Unfortunately, as much as the auctions try to prevent it, people still have bad intentions when they come in here sometimes, and there's not much you can do about it. Without power, we're pretty much limited to what we can see right here. The exhaust is a little messed up. The whole rear bumper needs to be replaced. The airbox is damaged there, that rear bumper beam. There's a lot of stuff back there that's going to need to be replaced. Before I get into the quarter here, let me preface it by saying I am by no means a professional. It doesn't look too bad in my extremely amateur opinion. While the rear window is lifting a little bit down here, it's not cracked. If you watch Goon Squad's rebuild, theirs was obviously much, much worse than this. This roof is completely intact. It's not separated, it's not lifted, it's not cracked. Even the quarter panel and weather strip seem to have survived, though I'm sure it lost a couple clips back there. There's nothing weird going on with buckling on the roof. Everything looks kosher until you get to about right here. The hardest part of fixing this car, in my opinion, is going to be this section right here. That's where it gets kind of involved. That's by no means some one sheet panel there. That's a lot of structure. You can see the pinch welds are separated right there. This isn't by any means going to be an easy fix, and after all, it does take a lot to total a $200,000 car. Either way, I can't get over how good the car looks, even in this state. Honestly, to me, there's something a little more beautiful about them when they look like this, but maybe I'm just weird. At this point, we've ignored it, but there is a Scat pack next to it. However, when you put a car like that, as nice as they are next to something like this, I mean, you tell me which one's going to get the attention. Just looking at it, I don't see a lick of visible damage out here, so let's see what's inside. It does not smell that bad inside. I actually had to look it up on Copart.com, and it looks like it is indeed a flood car. It's also listed as mechanical damage, so we're not going to start this thing. Based on the smell on the inside, this is probably one of the nicer flood cars you're going to get out here, so if you're looking for one, might be the ticket. Very clear that this is a Porsche. I have no idea what kind of Porsche it is. Literally no idea. Let's go ahead and hit the old trusty phone here and see what it says. Turns out this thing is listed as a Porsche Boxster. I don't know if this is like the original Boxster or if the person putting this in Copart's system also knew nothing about it, just like me. It is taped up, but the entire interior is gutted, so we're not missing much. This thing was on fire, and it was on fire bad. I have no idea if this is one of the ones that will pull that kind of money, but I think we all know at this point, old Porsches are worth a ton of money. You guys are gonna have to chime in the comments. Let me know if this thing, if it was clean, is worth a lot of money, and what it's worth in this condition, because I have no idea. Being that I can provide nothing else of value on that, let's keep rolling. Beautiful AMG Black Series over there, C8 Corvette next to it. Not a bad pair of cars whatsoever. If you've been watching some of our prior episodes, you know we're looking for a C8 to buy and part out. We haven't found the right one yet. We will at some point. Unfortunately, this one's not going to be it. This one's simply too easy of a fix. The rear bumper beam there is very clearly bashed in. It looks like this car took a direct center rear hit. It needs some exhaust tips, no big deal. You can put some nasty straight pipes on there, make a bunch of loud noise. As far as front damage on this thing, it's pretty much isolated to the passenger side, though there was some kind of hit here. Maybe it got pushed into something. You see the hood's cracked on both sides. The windshield is not cracked. The top fits on there perfectly. The doors align perfectly, that open without issue. Unfortunately, once again, no keys. This car is listed as running on their site. It has a beautiful carbon fiber section on the seat there. There is a lot to love about this car. The one thing I am not crazy about, the color combo. Silver, gray interior. I gotta say that's probably one of the worst C8 color combos I've ever seen, especially compared to some of the ones we saw down in Texas. Let me know what you guys think. Are you digging it? Is it kind of subdued and cool, or is it just boring? I think it's boring. Next up, and you probably caught a glimpse of it already, a Typhoon. These were real popular and accessible a little bit before I was in the cars. Even back in the mid to early 2000s, these things were starting to climb in price because everybody realized exactly how cool they were. Wow, the interior on this one is, oh wow, absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Obviously, a lot of this stuff can't be original, or if it is, props to whoever took care of this thing. This is definitely what you would call, in my opinion, period correct. There's not a single person on earth that's building one to look like this these days. We got ourselves a nice carbon fiber boost gauge there, which if you don't know anything about these, the reason I'm going crazy over this is that they're turbo. See, I wasn't lying to you, there it is, 4.3 turbo. Very old technology by today's standards, but they make all the right noises. They look cool, they're classic, and honestly, these days, they're worth a ton of money. I don't quite know why this one's here. Maybe it just kind of got abandoned at some point, though the interior definitely does not show that. The only noticeable damage I can see on it is on that rocker right there. Once again, unfortunately, no keys, so we're not going to get to hear this thing run, and that's probably the one I'm most upset about on this trip. We have ourselves a beautiful line of cars here. I'm not sure what that is, maybe a Bel Air. We know what that is, it's an El Camino, and if you can't see the back, boom, there you go. Full-blown mullet mobile. Obviously an old Mustang, pretty slick color. Ferrari California, I believe. I have to check myself on that one. Boom, I was on. California T. This car is definitely very lightly damaged. If you're looking for one of these to fix, I can't imagine you're gonna find a better one. A fender there, maybe some work to the door back there. Obviously it needs a hood, though maybe the right aluminum guy can get that out. You can see here it's kind of wavy. This front corner does need a ton of work here, though. It does look fairly straight. You can see a crack right there in the frame rail weld. That's definitely why this thing was totaled, though the engine looks super clean still. It's gonna need all new coolers there, a headlight, a fender. Overall, not too bad, though if you're buying this one, definitely be prepared to do something with that frame rail. This one we're definitely not going to touch. I don't want to get into a car that's probably not for sale. Very clearly says don't move, under investigation. We're not going to go in it, but we can certainly walk around it quickly. Put it in the comments. Tell me what you think's going on with this thing. Why is it under investigation? I think it's been sitting here quite some time. When and if this thing actually comes up for sale at auction, it doesn't look too bad once again. Given the status, I don't want to get too far into that. We have a ton to cover here. We've stayed in this top section the entire time so far. We got to make a move down the hill. We're way down here in the thick of it, and we have ourselves a beautiful 6th gen 1LE Camaro. For as somewhat common as the 5th gens are to see at auction, these ones are certainly anything but. Now this one's pretty simple. The damage is isolated to just the front. If you were walking behind this car, you'd never know anything was wrong with it. Other than that damage right there on the quarter, which certainly is not a new quarter, that's a repair. You can fix that pretty easily. Pull that out, stick some Bondo on it, fix her right on up. Wheels, brakes, everything in perfect condition. I have to imagine this car is super low mileage. I had absolutely no prior knowledge of this car. I did not see it on the site when I was doing my preliminary search here, but this thing is minty fresh. I'm not sure if the Chevy Performance strut bar comes factory on the 1LEs. If it does, good on Chevy. That's a sweet looking piece. Once again, in my semi-unprofessional opinion, I don't think this one's going to be too bad to fix. You can see how far the bumper beam got back there, and well, it's still a good foot in front of the engine. The accessory drive, the belt, everything, that's intact just how you want it. Now here's where we have a difference from the 5th gens. This is an aluminum bumper beam. It cracked and honestly probably saved that frame rail. The bumper beams on the 5th gens are steel. They do not break. They bend, they pull everything along with it. Even the horn on the end of the frame rail just simply ripped off rather than mangling the frame rail further up. Now speaking of mangled, that cooler right there is absolutely blasted. Fortunately, based on the fact that it looks like the fluid in there is red, I'm guessing that's a transcooler. No harm, no foul. As long as we didn't blow an engine oil cooler off of it, we're all good to go. Also damaged up here are the side radiators. And you might be thinking to yourself, Camaros have auxiliary radiators? If you didn't know that, no sweat, because neither did I. I'm pretty positive that's specific to the 1LEs. We haven't actually parted one of these out, and unfortunately, like some of the other cars we've seen, this probably is not going to be the one. This is an easy fix. The car's worth a ton of money. We buy cars where the sum of the parts are worth more than the whole. This is one that is the complete opposite. It does have a phenomenal looking interior in it. It's nothing fancy, nothing special, and that's not the point of a 1LE, let's be real. It has some real basic Recaros in it, Alcantara centers, leather outside, nice seats, they felt great sitting in them. You get your 1LE Alcantara wrapped steering wheel, which funny enough is in great shape still. That's not always the case. Now unfortunately, I can't get the dash to power up enough to show me mileage on it. It also looks like it's a very new car here at Copart. Their website doesn't even have the mileage on it yet, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one in the future and see if it's as low as I think it is, but unfortunately, we're not going to get our answer today. Now, in some parts of the country, these cars have kind of became run-of-the-mill. You guys saw a ton of them when I was doing these walkthroughs in Texas. Pause.
Hey, it's happening! Everybody stay calm! What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm!
I came walking up through here, caught a glimpse of the car right down that aisle and went over to check it out. Then I got to about right here. While I walked right past that rear rim, that one turned ever so slightly to the right, let me know exactly what this car is, and it is definitely not a Hellcat. This is definitely a salvage auction first for me, and it's probably one of only 5 or 6 that I've seen in person, period. We would have noticed it off the bat if we'd have saw that giant hood scoop and came in on the front side of this car. Unfortunately, we didn't, so it took us just a little bit of extra time to realize this is a demon. This is certainly not the most expensive car we're gonna see at this lot, but it might be my favorite. To be able to get up close and personal with one of these ultra rare cars is just super cool, especially when it's in this condition. First things first here, let's try to figure out why this thing was totaled. The front end does not look bad whatsoever. Obviously, you have a little dent there in the bumper beam. It's wrinkled there. The entire front heat exchanger assembly, AC condenser, radiator, the fan, all that is in place and untouched. The engine very clearly looks untouched. It does look unmodified as well. This is a super sick intake setup they have on it, and I haven't been able to see under the hood of one of these this close prior. When the hood shuts, that portion right there comes down, seals around that weather strip on the airbox. That massive intake on the front of this, every bit of that goes right into that airbox. I am 100% sure that this car is going to get fixed. This is definitely not a parts car. These things pull a ton of money, and though we haven't looked at the rear too hard, this thing does not look that bad. Unfortunately, that little bit of damage on the hood kind of sucks. It does tend to happen this way with cars sometimes, especially expensive cars. If there's an expensive piece on it, you can count on it just having the most minor bit of damage. I can't imagine that hood OEM is cheap, but hopefully somebody can go ahead and fix that instead of having to replace it. This whole side doesn't look awful. In fact, I saw more damage on that side, but it looks like there's damage on the inside of the door, which is very strange. You can also see a little bit down there on the pillar, which is, again, very odd. I don't know that you can see it very well through this wrap, but I can see it in person. It looks like this door may have been open and got hit. It's nice and flat all the way up through there until you get right there. It is severely creased. This part right here is pried out. It's honestly looking like to me somebody hit this thing when it was open or something like that. That's my best guess. What's weird about that is this rear damage. You think if that happened, that may be the only bit of damage. while not too bad, it certainly has some rear quarter damage here. But I believe these are the same as the wide-body Challengers. Though I can't recall seeing this under there, so I could definitely be wrong about that. Regardless, I'm pretty sure you could section what you need there from a Challenger if the Demon parts aren't available from Dodge. Also has some really weird damage here on the spoiler. There's a gouge there, nick, full-blown hole, another nick. This is a confusing one, guys, so let me know what you think happened to this in the comments. Now, normally, given that that door is all taped up, we wouldn't even try to get in there and start it, but this one, we got to go the extra mile. I can't find my first Demon at a salvage auction and not hop over the center console. Whoever was taking this thing apart did us a solid and left a bunch of bolts, left a bunch of hardware there. That is always nice. You have that awesome looking Demon there. You have what I believe is a factory roll bar. I suppose, judging by the vent there, this is Demon 1545. Of all the cars we viewed, this is the one that I really hope has the juice to start. Oof. Oof. This thing sounds good. It's stock, at least the best I can tell. It's loud, but not too loud. On the way home, I did decide to look this car up on Copart.com, and I saw that it does indeed come with the Demon crate, as if we needed one more thing to make this car the absolute perfect auction car. A couple rows up, we run into this Scat pack here, but honestly, guys, after that Demon, this really doesn't even register. We're just gonna admire its nice color and keep it moving. We don't really pay attention to SUVs in this, but when we see something that's a little special, very obviously a higher trim, we're gonna check it out just briefly. Now, I'm not gonna say this because I don't know for sure, but I have not seen a GTS this color, period. Maybe it's because I'm not really paying attention to Panameras, but I want to say this may be PTS. You guys can shred me in the comments if I'm wrong, but it sure is a cool color. The interior is, oh, sick. It might be kind of hard to pick up on camera, but it is actually brown. That is a beautiful color on this car. I did have somebody in one of my last episodes say, thanks for checking out what I believe was a Macan, if I can recall off the top of my head. I was thinking about buying it, and you gave me some more insight on it. So I am going to just show the damage on this real quick. It looks like, obviously, some upper frame rail. That front tub is kind of the same design in all Porsches. That upper section of the frame rail is just completely bashed in, which, once again, makes sense. You guys know this is an expensive car, and it definitely takes a lot to total it. All in all, I think this is a nice car because the damage is isolated to just right here. You don't have a whole lot to worry about. The whole car doesn't need to be reworked. You need to address one corner, one frame rail, one section, though it is a bit of damage, and you have yourself a good car. Most of the times when I go to these lots, I'll go in the office, get the rundown on the grid of the lot, the section, so I can find anything pretty easily if I want to. This one, however, is a sublot. There's actually not a public office, so I kind of just did my own thing. It turns out that this car may be inside. There she is, hiding way back in the corner here. With a couple other cool cars, actually. We're gonna have to look around a little more in here. We are certainly gonna go over that because I just noticed that big intercooler. That thing is pancake flat. Here we have the most expensive car in the building, an Aventador. I do recall seeing a story about this car somewhere online. I think there was something interesting about the wreck for this. Maybe it happened during an event or something like that. I don't recall off the top of my head. Unfortunately, this car has been here a while. It is pretty dirty at this point, nothing that you can't clean up. We're not going to get in it and try to start the thing because it doesn't have a lick of battery power. We are, of course, going to check out the damage, though. As far as the rear, boom, that's it. Diffuser, rear bumper, whatever, no big deal. That wheel looks like it is slightly misaligned. Now we get to the front. There's no real good way to put this. This one needs some work. It's a pretty heavy wreck. You see that upper frame rail there is broken. That one over there broken as well. That lower frame rail over this way, that one over that way. All the radiators, all the cooling, the suspension in the front for the most part is pretty jacked up. It did deploy the rollover protection. No, the best I can tell, this car was not on its roof. I don't know what the deal is with that. Maybe when they get hit in a certain way, it just does that regardless. The lighting in here is not great, but let's see what we can see inside. Person, it doesn't look too hateful. Obviously, both bags are blown. It's full of dust. There's the door panel over there. It's obviously off the driver door here. Black leather, red stitch. Seats are in great shape, console in great shape. You see that bottom bag there is blown as well. Without being able to start it, without being able to do much to it, we're not really able to gather a lot other than see that damage we just saw up there. This is very likely not a car we'd buy at this point, so I'm not too worried about it. Still cool to see nonetheless. I very clearly cannot come to a lot with the Lambo and not check it out. Before we get over to that, which will probably be our last car of the day, we're going to give these cars a quick look. Here we have what looks to be an undamaged, as far as I can tell, Carrera S 911. I'm really not seeing much that's wrong here. I'm going to have to say that it's probably a flood car and, well, it has a bad wheel. While that doesn't throw the flood theory completely out the window, it does probably mean there's some undercarriage damage here. The old smell test says this is definitely not a flood car. It kind of smells like a new car in here, though the thing has 43,000 miles on it. It does have some form of battery power, obviously, so you know what that means. We're not going to not try to start it. The fact that it starts right up, has perfect oil pressure, tells me everything is perfectly fine with that engine. With that said, we have no reason to let this thing run for an extended period of time. I tried to poke my head under there, even with a flashlight on this floor here with this lighting, you can't see much. So this one is kind of just going to be a mystery car as far as the damage. You see here that fender liner is pulled back a little bit. That wheel obviously once again broken. This is one of those cars to fix absolutely right. If there's some kind of floor rocker damage, it probably costs a ton of money. To get it fixed and drivable to your standards, you might be able to do that cheap depending on what you consider fixed. Here we have another Mopar hurt by the demon effect. It's a nice Hellcat, looks like a pretty nice car, and it's still not that impressive because we just saw that demon. Unfortunately, being that it's taped shut, we're not going to go ripping stuff off. Like usual, we're going to go ahead and leave that shut, so we're not going to see under the hood. They didn't make it hard to find the damage on this one, being that it has no wheel whatsoever. Funny enough, this front bumper is either not damaged whatsoever, or at the very least, very easily fixable. And from what I can see here, and point it out if you guys see something different, I'm going with perfectly intact. That hood has a slight crease down, a not so slight crease back here. The fender is obviously missing. The biggest piece of damage here, aside from the suspension, because that's not super expensive, not super hard to fix, is this right here. This upper apron is pretty well bashed in. You can see the hood over there is bowed up, so that'd have to be addressed. Now this section here looks like it's spot welds on, being that some of them are blown off there. This is the exact same as a base Challenger. So that leads me to believe that you can probably fix this thing with just standard junkyard parts. You're not gonna have to go to a specialty place like LeeCparts.com. In fact, a lot of the parts on these cars, when we buy them to part them out, don't pull a lot of money because of just that. It's really the Scat Pack and Hellcat specific stuff that pulls money. That front bumper assembly, that hood, all that stuff's worth good money. When you get to the basic stuff like the mirrors, the doors, the fenders, they simply just don't pull much at all. Not being able to pop the hood, we're not gonna start it because I don't know if there's any hidden damage under there, though this car is listed as running on Copart.com. The interior, pretty basic, it's black. Not a whole lot to see in there. It's in good shape. You know, aside from the wheel sitting on there, it may have left some indentations. You may have to do some work. It seems like a pretty basic package, but there's no damage, no blown bags. In my opinion, it's a pretty good fixer. Maserati, we've seen way too many of those up here. This Benz is fairly unique looking. It's absolutely massive. And it is a S500. Frankly, I don't see an AMG badge, so we're gonna keep going. Next to last car up here, next to, you know, of course, another Mazzy, is this beautiful color Cobra. It's a fiberglass car, very clearly. It's a replica. We're not looking at some $500,000 plus car here, don't worry. I think this might be the first time this gets admitted on this channel. I constantly get stuff for it around the shop, but I love that color. It's showing up darker than it should on camera. This is more of a pale yellow, almost like an Easter egg type yellow. Once you get to this side with a little natural light on it, it looks a little better. That down there is a more accurate representation of the color than that is up there. Once again, unfortunately, the hood is taped shut, so we're not gonna know what powers this, though we might be able to gather a little something from the fender badge. If I had to absolutely just take a shot in the dark, I'd say probably like a 383 Chevy, but who knows. As far as the damage up here, it's really not that bad. There's not much to these kit cars, at least as far as the metal work goes down there. But when you get into the fiberglass and stuff, that's something you may have to source from some type of manufacturer, whoever originally made this kit. I'm gonna try to show you the interior best I can, but it is completely sealed top to bottom. Good news is it is manual. Nice tan seats in there. It actually looks like a pretty cool, pretty well put together kit. But now, finally, enough talking kit cars, enough talking about my weird color desires. We got to go figure out what's going on with this thing. First off, when you have a set of 18s on this with sticky tires, it tells me it may be making a power. This is a 13 GTR, and they did not have an underhood picture in the listing. If you know GTRs, you know that logo right there very well. Alpha, the best of the best. I haven't mentioned it often on the channel, but I used to have a GTR. I actually built one. It was about 1,000 horsepower. It was a pretty cool car. Unfortunately, they're just not my cup of tea. I went from Vette to GTR, back to Vette. So obviously, I'm not personally the biggest GTR fan, though if you're trying to go fast, there's really not a better option. I don't think this needs saying, but it's pretty clear this was a pretty bad wreck, so let's hope whoever was in this is okay. You're not going to be able to see it whatsoever, but I am pulling the hood latch there, and the cable is definitely broken. It's going to be very disappointing if we don't get to open this hood. Well, guys, I put the camera down, figured I'd try to mess with this thing, see if we could get in there, because I figured it was going to be some big ordeal. Turns out, all you have to do to open this is lift up on it. It's not that hard. First off, I noticed it when I grabbed this hood. It is covered in oil. There's a nice oil film under here, though I don't see any obvious spot it's coming from. It is a 6-injector car. It's a stock intake manifold, so it's nothing absolutely wild. However, there is a set of Alpha fuel rails down there with some nice beefy lines. It looks like a Dash 8 maybe? That is the absolute best I can position the camera down in there. You can't see it great, but you know that is a big inducer wheel for a GTR. It looks like this person drew the line somewhere in between aftermarket turbo kit and 12-injector setup. If you have a turbo setup that big, a built motor and 12-injector, and you're making 1,500 plus horsepower. With a roof like that, the interior is pretty well trashed. It didn't have the passenger airbag go off, so that's a plus. The console down there is missing a bunch, but you know, what are you gonna do? There are bigger problems on this car than the interior condition. You got a beautiful set of rays on there. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think these are called ZE40s. This wheel is not in tip-top shape, clearly. The quarter, the front suspension. There's not much to say on this other than the fact that it's just a terrible wreck. The good news here is the front end is at least partially together. Of all the things that are out of place on this car, the engine is not one of them. For all the cars here, I've said, you know, that's a fixer. We have no chance to buy that. It's not going to a salvage guy. This one obviously is 110% getting parted out. We haven't done a GTR in a while. Back in the day when I owned some, I did part a few of them out. They weren't super great for us, so I didn't get that heavy into them. But this one, being in the video, having some mods, getting to check it out in person, the condition of it, maybe this is the one. If this GTR is something you'd like to see us buy, maybe do a video on, put it down in the comments. That concludes a very hot, long day. The good news is we get to do it all over again tomorrow. If you've watched this long, I don't need to give you the whole like, subscribe, all that stuff. So I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow.